General Blesse, can you talk about your initial entry into the Korean War flying the P-51?
Having just gotten out of West Point, the World War II was over in Europe, and about to be over. I didn't realize how quickly, but it was about to be over also in the Pacific. But I got out of there, they sent me down, I flew P-40s for a month down in Alabama, and then they gave me a set of orders to a P-51 RTU, and said, as soon as you finish that RTU, you're going straight to the Pacific. I thought, boy, that's good. At least they're not going to leave me out of the whole war. And before we could get out of the 51 thing, the war ended. So there were 52 of us that were hopeful fighter pilots out of the academy in my class, and of course none of us got any combat experience at all. But I went on, they actually sent me to Okinawa. For 2 years I flew P-47 out there, and the last 2 months I was there, the whole place changed to F-80s. So by the time I went home in February of February of 47, I had about 700 hours in the P-47, excuse me, and a few hours, about 30 in the F-80. And I went to an F-80 outfit up in Selfridge, Michigan, and I flew for 2 years there. I flew the F-80 and the F-86. The Korean War started. I had 150 hours in the F-86 and about 1,000 hours in the 80. The guy came around and said, we need one P-51 pilot. And every F-86 pilot ran and hid someplace, except the old numbnuts. I stuck up my hand and said, I'll take that. But it was necessary. It seemed like it was dumb to leave a good jet outfit like that. But they're career awesome. Everybody's got combat experience for you. Your prospects for advancement, I didn't think were very good. So I took the 51 assignment. I went over there, flew 67 missions in the P-51, and because of my 1,000 hours in the F-80, they transferred me up to an F-80 outfit that was very short on experienced pilots. When I finished that, I went back to the States. 5 months later, the MiGs were flying. Now they were doing something that I'd wanted to do all my life. By the time I was about 8 or 9 years old, I was reading about Eddie Rickenbacker, and he was my hero. I wanted to, somehow or another, I wanted to be like Captain Eddie. And that stayed to be the first thing in my mind. I made quite a few decisions on my future course in the Air Force based on what I thought Rickenbacker would have done. And with my first wife, 3 months pregnant, I went in and told her, I'm sorry, but I got to go back to Korea. And of course, that went over like an atom bomb, but I still had to go.
Well, now, I want you to tell a story. You're skipping a great story when you were flying the P-51s and you had a takeoff, and I think a gasoline truck ran in front of you. I want you to tell that story.
Gasoline truck?
Did you have a situation where a truck came in front and you did a flip in your P-51?
Oh, well, something like that, but it wasn't a gasoline truck. I tell you, I actually only had about 7 hours of a P-51 when they sent me over there, and they said, don't worry about it, you're going to go through a P-51 course at Nellis. I got to Nellis, and there were no P-51s. They hadn't started the class yet. This was late 45. And so they put me in an F-80 course, sent me to Korea, and then threw me back into the P-51 assignment. And I went down to Busan Air Base. And they gave me one flight in the afternoon and said, fine, said, be sure and get yourself squared away and get a good night's sleep. You're on tomorrow morning's mission.
You're qualified.
Yeah. So we got up and my first combat mission, it was raining. The ceiling was about 600 or 800 feet. It was dark. We were leaving, still hadn't gotten light yet. And off we went. We went up there and we had to meet a forward air controller, and he gave us a target, which was light by this time. And it was up about 40 miles southeast of Sinuiju. And he directed it onto a target, and we dropped our napalm and got rid of that. That was a help. And before we could get rid of the rockets or do any strafing or anything else on any other targets, we got a call that went to every aircraft that was airborne that morning that the weather was terrible, it was coming in, and you had to get back to your base immediately. Well, in our case, we took off from about a 5,300-foot cement runway, and the runway we were supposed to go back to was a small, it's about 38 or 3,900-foot grass strip that was just south of Pyongyang. It was in North Korea, but just south of the river of Pyongyang. So, anyway, we tried to get in there. We couldn't see. We made 2 or 3 passes, and the runway was so short, the field was so short, just a grass strip. And by the time we could see where it is we were supposed to be landing, we were too far down to try to land. We'd have gone off the runway and into something else. So after about 3 passes, they brought out 2 big 55-gallon drums with about this much oil in the bottom of them. And they lit the oil, and the black smoke curled up. They put them about 100 yards apart, and we could see where it was we were supposed to be landing. So the next pass we came around, everything was good. Everything was good. My flight commander, since I was the number 2 man, because I was the least experienced, with only 7 hours in the airplane and no combat experience, he said, keep me in sight, stay back as far as you can, but don't lose sight of me. That's fine. So we did that, and I was on his right. He came in and touched down, and the visibility, by the way, was about 1/10 of a mile. You couldn't see from this tent over to the next tent. And he's rolling, and I'm getting ready. I just barely got on the ground, and I see this 6x6 truck coming across the middle of the runway, 3 guys in it. And I'm sure what they said was, what? We got to get over on the other side. Well, there's nobody going to land in this one. Go right across the center. And so they're going right across the center of the runway. And I had touched down and run not more than 30 or 40 yards. And my left wing hit the forward part of the truck, swung me around. I still had a lot of airspeed, and it swung me around, and the right wing tried to fly again, and the airplane did a kind of a circle thing like that and went up. Sometimes in my dreams I can see that airplane coming down. I can still see the prop. It's on the prop, flips over on its back, and the airplane goes along digging up the grass and everything else, and me with it, for about 30 yards. So I went underneath the thing, and I'm wiggling around and moving fingers, and I said, hell, I'm not even hurt. But I couldn't move 3 inches in any direction. The airplane's lying on top of me. And then in a few, about 10 or 15, 20 seconds, 100-octane fuel starts running out of the fuselage tank, and it's hitting me around just above my fanny and running up my head since I was upside down. Fills up my helmet with gasoline, Then it finally rolled all over me. My whole suit was full of gasoline and everything. And the only good thing that I did up until that point was when I saw the leader go out of sight and I was sure I was going to hit that. I was the one that was going to hit that truck. I just reached up and turned off the battery switch and the mag switch, and boom, and I hit that. And if I hadn't done that, I'm sure that airplane and I would have burned up to a finish right there on the runway. But there was no fire. And a couple of guys came up. One of them had a bayonet, and the other guy had a big stick. And they dug a hole that was about like this, and like this. And as soon as they backed away from it, I undid my safety belt, fell in there, fell on my head, damn near broke my neck. And I got up and climbed up and got out of the hole and started running. And I was sure that airplane was going to explode. And I didn't run very fast, maybe 100 yards in 2 or 3 seconds. I was just kind of scared. But some guy over at somewhere, I don't know where he came from, but after I got a good respectable distance away from the aircraft, this guy drives up and he said, "Were you the pilot of that?" Yeah, I was. He said, "Get in." He said that the major over here in operations wants to talk to you. So I got on the Jeep and he drives me over to this guy. Walked in, there's a major there. I salute him and he looks up and doesn't bother to do anything. He said, "I understand you had a little trouble out there." And I said, "Yes, sir, it wasn't very good." He said, "What's the condition of that airplane?" I said, "Sir, that airplane is never going to fly again. It's upside down and everything's busted and fuel's leaking all over everything. It's probably going to burn up before you and I get talking." He said, "How about you? Do you want to fly anymore?" And I said, "Yes, sir, that's what I came to Korea for." And he said, "Okay." He said, "We have a requirement for a 4-ship flight in the tent next door. There's only 3 pilots. Go over there and join them, and they'll be going off in about 20 minutes. So I went over to my flight suit. It's stinking so bad. The other 3 guys that were going on the mission with me were sitting on the bench, and I came over and sat next to them. And all 3 of them got up and moved. I felt like I had the worst case of BO in the history of the world. But anyway, I didn't have time to change flight suits or anything else. So I got a quick briefing, went out to the airplane, and I remember we made a formation takeoff, going off on the second mission. I looked over here to my right. There's that damn B-51 still upside down. Fumes coming off, the thing going up like this. Never did burn up. Apparently, eventually, they towed it away, and there never was a fire run. But that was the conclusion of my first mission. And I remember thinking, as we made the turn out of traffic, I looked back and saw that, and I said, this is not a very good start to a career that I hoped was going to make me an ace. So far, I'm 0 enemy, 1 friendly. And off we went, and things were better. I didn't ruin another American airplane until my last mission, 223 missions later.
Well, we're going to talk about that one in just a minute.
We flew once a day. We flew 3 times a day. So your odds are already down pretty far. And then you didn't know whether your mission, even if you were going up there, if your mission was going to be in the area where the bigs were. And the other thing was that the tactics were, in my opinion, the tactics were terrible. They were flying a line abreast, which is a 100% defensive formation. They were flying a line abreast formation, and I don't know why they couldn't figure out that if either one of these guys gets attacked, you got another element somewhere, but they don't know. Like, you don't know where the element is, and you don't know whether they see the same ones that you see. So I don't know. I saw a MiG on my second mission, and I didn't see another one until my 48th mission. I got my first kill on the 48th mission. Then it was the same thing, up and back and up and back and up and back. And when I had 86 missions, I had 3 kills and 5 sightings in 86 missions. I got my 4th one about the 92nd mission, and of course, Rickenbacker is back nagging me again, and I need another one to become an ace. personnel and extended for another 25 missions. And I got my 5th one on about the 104th mission, and on about the 108th or 9th mission, I got 2 in 1 mission, and came back and was totally surprised to find out I was the leading ace in the theater with 7 kills. Colonel Blesse, who was the leading ace in Europe in World War II, had 6.5, and my wing commander came out, shook my hand, and he was really happy because Blesse had the opposing wing, the 51st wing, while we were in the 4th. He used a little profanity, but he said, "Thank God somebody finally beat Blesse." But that was a kind of a good tour. At the last part of it, I got the next month I got another 2 or 3. Got 2 more, I guess. And finally, on the 3rd of October, I was flying my 121st mission. I had 4 more to go, and we ran into. I had a brand new guy on my wing. He had about 4 missions. I really didn't want to do anything too drastic with this guy. The last thing I wanted to do was to have him lose me and then get shot down or something. But anyway, we got up there, and the number 3 man had something wrong, and I sent he and the number 4 man back, so there was just this other fellow and myself. And the area we went into, no mix, nothing going on. Everything looked like a airfield in the United States Sunday afternoon. So I thought, well, I'll take him across the river. We'll drop down to about 50 feet and go across the river so our own radar doesn't report us. And then we climbed up on the other side where they thought we were MiGs. And I showed him the Tetuan and Anton and the different airfields that the MiGs were using over there, and then we decided we'd go home. So we had about maybe 50 miles to go south before we hit the water. Hitting the water was important because you didn't want to get shot down. If you were going to get shot down, you wanted to get to the water. And it was the same way for them. If they were going to get shot down, they didn't want to get to the water because our people would pick them up and they'd be prisoners. So we had opposing things there. But as we got about halfway down, we're maybe 25 miles from the water. And we got jumped by a flight of 4 Russian pilots. At that time now, I didn't know they were Russian. They were just MiGs, I saw them. I found out later when I got back in the Pentagon and they were giving me debriefings on different things. Because I was a leading ace, I found out then that those were 4 Russian fighter pilots. And they were at about 45,000. We were at about 36 or 37. So they were letting down and they were gaining on us. I didn't want them to catch us until we got out over that water, because I knew they wouldn't follow us over there. And eventually the flight leader, when we got about, I don't know, maybe 10 or 15 miles from the water, the flight leader realized that he was not going to get into firing range before we were right over the water. And so what he did was he leveled off, pulled the nose up, and fired the cannon that he had in the airplane, and it had shells in it that you could see them coming. And after they'd gone by, you could see they were going by. So it was always nice to know that they had missed it when you see them go by like that. And when that happened, I watched him do it, and the things were flying, and they were falling back 1,500 feet, 2,000 feet behind my wingman. And then, out of whatever reason, I don't know, he decided that because the guy was firing, that he had to do something, and he broke to the left. And that really started things. Up until then, we were all set. We needed about another 2 to 3 minutes, 3 or 4 minutes, and we were out in the water. We'd have been on the way home, and we had enough fuel to do it all. But now he breaks to the left, That's exactly what the Russian flight leader wanted him to do, that he cuts him off, and my wingman starts it. I told him to drop your nose, pick up a dive, keep 4 Gs on the airplane until I tell you different. And he's doing this, and the MiG is behind him, but he's still pretty far behind him. And as soon as the leader got in position, and the number 2 man was with him, then I tried to turn to get the leader away from him. Well, we went from about 35,000 down to about 25 like that, and nothing was happening except that at around 25,000, the number 2 man, for some reason that I don't even know yet today, they were in a nice formation and tight turn like this, and suddenly the number 2 man took all the G's off his airplane and he slides out to the right. Well, when he did that, it gave me an opportunity to get a shot at him, and I relaxed my G's and slid over, and I was out of range, but not totally, and I got some good hits on him, and he broke away then and went back across the yellow and went home. The leader realized then that he was by himself, that he had an American airplane in front of him and also one behind him, and he rolled over and split us and took off. And while all of that was going on, the number 3 man had started firing at me, but I was practically straight and level and a damn good target for him. And he missed me, and that was a good thing, because he was gradually overtaking me. And I just increased my turn. All I wanted to do with the things that we did in practice, that we did in practice at Nellis when we were in the combat area, I just wanted to get some lateral separation with this guy. And I pulled it around tight, and he's backed out of here. And I took a look, and sure enough, he didn't start his turn quick enough, and he started sliding out this way, and that's what I wanted, was some lateral separation. And as soon as he did that, and he had the number 4 man with him, as soon as he did that, I reversed my turn, pulled back on the stick, cut power, threw the speed brakes out, and ended up about here, and the 2 of these guys went underneath me. And they knew that one of them was going to get shot down if they didn't get the hell out of there, and they took off and went home. So now, I forgot to tell you, as soon as the leader left, I called my wingman, and I said, okay, you're clear. Turn to 217 degrees, climb to 35,000 feet, and go to the base. I'll be okay. And off he went, and he got back all right. Then, now I'm by myself. The 4 MiGs, one of them's got some problems because I put some bullets in him, but nobody else got hit by anything as far as I know. And I started climbing out. I was east of the water now because of the way that the descent went. And I turned around and started out on a heading toward my own base, which was now about at least 150 miles away. And as I climbed out, I looked at my fuel gauge and I thought, boy, this is going to be close. And I'm looking at 1,000 pounds on there, and a trip that takes about 11 or 1,200. I figured if I can get up to 35,000, I can shut it off and pick up a 200-mile glide and glide within, say, 30 or 40 miles of the base, and then restart it and get power for landing. And that was my plan. I got up to about 11 or 12,000 feet, then established a 300-knot climb, and it just reminded me of the very first mission that I flew in P-51s. When I looked down to the left side and saw that truck coming across the runway, now I look out to the left side, and here's a MiG coming down. I thought, good God, of all the times I've gone up and back and can't find a MiG, now when I don't have enough fuel to fight with the guy, here he is. So he bedded down, and I'm climbing up, and I'm waiting for him to make any kind of a move toward me. And he didn't. And finally, when he got about opposite me up here, I realized he didn't see me. So as he's going along like this, and I'm coming up in here, I'm looking at, and I'm saying to myself, he doesn't see me. I don't think I got enough fuel to get there anyway. What the hell? I pulled over, and after I pulled over and got behind him, then he started to make a turn, and I cut him off in the turn and shot him down. The whole thing took about 25 seconds. Turned around again and got back on my heading to go home. And I had enough fuel then to climb. I climbed to about 14 or 15,000 feet, and I had, and the engine quit without a fuel. Set up a 200-mile glide, 200-mile-an-hour glide, and I called a PBY. We had a PBY in the area who was always there when we were on, when we had a mission anywhere near McAllen. So, and I made contact with him and told him where I was going to first get over the water, I hoped. And he said Raji wasn't far from there. He'd give me another call, and then I kept on going. I kept on gliding down. I got to 5,000, crossed the water, crossed over so that I had water underneath me. That made me feel a lot better. And about that time, I called the PBY, and he said, Rudler, I got you in sight. I said, okay. I'm about 5,000 now. I'm going to bail out here probably in about 20 seconds. Okay. And right after I said that, before I tell you this, we had a combat radio up in group operations, and whenever one squadron was committed, whenever they had a mission up in Mig Alley, if they got into the MiGs, you could hear the whole fight going on that channel, and so they knew. The guys in my squadron knew I was up there, and so there were about 15 or 20 guys that were not on any mission. We were the only 4 people in the group at that time that were still up there. And so I told him, I said, okay, I'm going to punch out here in about 15 seconds, and something happened to me then that I'll never forget as long as I live. Right after I said I was going to punch out, some guy called and says, he said, good luck, you little bastard, but get back here, you owe me $10. Another guy said, good luck, we'll see you at dinner. And another guy had about 6 very quick messages. All were the sort of things that you really like to hear when you're in a spot like that. And when I finally, I said, okay, I got to go. And I sat there for a second, and I said, God, what a great bunch of guys. I looked down at my altimeter, I'm at about 2,300 feet, and I should be at about 4,000. And then I punched out, everything worked good, got rid of the chute and the whole business system, and I got in the water, got in my little dinghy, pretty soon the PBY taxis up, and he fires this little thing out over the top of my canopy and sitting out of my dinghy, the little boat I had. And I grabbed that, and he pulled me out up the side of the airplane and into the PBY. And then I didn't have, I really wasn't quite ready for that, because when I first got in the water, one of the pockets on my flight suit was not zipped. And I had some maps and some other classified information that was on another piece of paper in there, and they were out of my pocket, and I could see them over there floating in the water. So I got over there, I swam over there, picked those 2 things up, and came back. And I knew there were other things, but those were the ones I knew were classified. So when they put me in the airplane, I ran up the aisle. There was a little aisle that went up to the pilot. I ran up to the pilot, and I banged on the back, and I said, hey, you can't go yet. I got to get those things. You got to get my dinghy. And there was some classified stuff in my, he said, the hell with your dinghy, the hell with the classified stuff. They're shooting at me from the shore, and we're getting the hell out of here. That was the last word of it. But it was a wild experience that turned out very well. It ended up being my 10th victory, and that established me as the leading ace in the theater, and that remained until the new airplanes came out in February. They had more thrust and the 20-millimeter guns and all that, and the guys began, between then and July when the war ended, the last 4 months, were about 3 or 4 guys passed me as far as getting the career. I don't know. can't think of them right now, but there were about 4 of them, and they were all very good pilots, and the MiGs were flying at that time. Both sides knew the war was going to end in July, so the MiGs were up every day, and that's what we thought we were getting into when we first got into Korea. And that was never occurred until the war was almost over.
And then General Blesse ended up being in Vietnam as you noticed Korea, Vietnam. Sir, one thing that I've seen, if any of you watch the History Channel or the Military Channel, his story is told on Wings Over the... No, what was that series?
Dogfight.
It's a series called Dogfights, and it depicts the episode that he spoke of here at the end. Well, again, from the P-51 era, transition from World War II to the Corsair, close air support, which the Marines did a lot of on the islands as they went up in World War II, to continuing in through Korea and even in through today. And then the transition into the air war with the F-86s. We're going to end it here. We've got to transition to another one here just momentarily. The symposium following this is on the Pacific. We have Dick Cole, who was General Doolittle's co-pilot on the Doolittle raid, Jim Hill, who flew with Pappy Boyington in the Black Sheep Squadron, coming on after this, and Wayne Johnson, who is a member of the 23rd Fighter Group in China. Of course, was the evolution from the Flying Tigers. So give these guys a great hand. Go buy their books in the tents, and Great America. Thank you guys so much.
Fighter pilot. By the time when I was about 8 or 9 years old, I started reading everything I could get my hands on that had to do with Eddie Rickenbacker. I thought there just wasn't anybody like him. Everything he got into, he was magnificent at, and I thought I sure would like to be able to fly fighters. If I was lucky enough, maybe I could even shoot down a few airplanes like he did. But it was Eddie Rickenbacker was my sole propelling force at that stage, and he stayed there. I had one close encounter in going into professional golf, and I had a very prominent golf master. And he said, well, you can do as well as anybody else, but he said, one thing I found is that if you have to win to eat, golf loses a little of its luster. And that was enough for me, and I went for the fighter pilot routine.
Graduated from West Point in 1945. They had 2-year classes at that point, didn't they?
No, 3 years was the minimum.
3 years?
3 was the minimum. I did catch the 3-year class by going in at 42 and coming out at 45.
Okay. You grew up in a military family. Your father was a general?
Well, he was eventually.
Okay.
I remember him mostly as a captain and a major.
Okay, well, he was an officer in the Army. You grew up in the Canal Zone. You grew up in a military family. You graduated from West Point. It's 1945. You've had a whole lifetime of preparation looking at the military. And the war's over. Were you disappointed?
Well, not really. Everybody that we knew was going over to the fighter pilots were going on units, and they were all going out, and a lot of them were shooting down airplanes and doing things that we wanted to do. But we really, truthfully, never had much time at West Point to think about that. There were all the studies and the examinations that we had to the war was already over in Europe, and there were quite a few of us, about 50 of us were already fighter pilots that had, well, we were pilots that had gotten our training while we were at West Point. They sent us down to fly P-40s for a month. We did that. This was in July of 45. And then at the end of that month, they said, okay, you guys are all doing fine. You're going up to P-51 RTU, and you're going straight to the Pacific. The war was still going on fine over there, and we thought we were going to be a part of it finally. But that didn't happen. They dropped the 2 atomic weapons, and the 52 of us became, I think we felt like we were the only ones in the whole Air Force that didn't have any combat experience.
And so 1950 comes, Korean War starts, where were you?
1950, I was at Selfridge Field, Michigan. Right after, when the war ended, they sent us out to Okinawa. And I flew P-47s out there for a couple of years. All the guys were going home. There was a 6-month period where I had to crew my own airplane if I wanted to fly. And we did that. I look back on it and think how stupid that really was. But anyway, I did get checked out in a P-80 at the very end of my tour out there on Okinawa, and that was instrumental because when I got reassigned about 3 months later to the U.S., I went to the F-80 outfit at Selfridge Field. Most of my other classmates went back to P-51 outfits and other units like that. But where was I? I was at Selfridge Field, Michigan. When the war started, I had about 1,000 hours in the F-80 and about 150 hours in the F-86. And 10 days after the war started, the guy came around and said, we need 1 P-51 pilot. And old numbnut sticks up his hand because I had no combat experience whatsoever, and I was a career officer, and I felt like this might be the last chance that I had. And that started it all off, and I went to Pacific and ended up on Korea flying P-51s.
And in the P-51s, you had 67 combat missions. In F-80s, you had 35 combat missions. And the F-86, you had 121 combat missions, 223 combat missions in Korea. Two tours. And on those 2 tours, you shot down 10 aircraft.
All on my second tour flying F-86s.
Okay, and you had 1 probable, and you damaged 3 other ones. Now, do you have any indication of who you were flying against? Were they Chinese? Were they North Koreans? Or were they possibly Russian?
At the time we were there, we didn't know and we didn't give a damn. There were MiG-15s up there, and our job was to get into them and shoot down as many of them as we could.
And what was their quality? What was the quality of their flying and their aircraft?
The aircraft was very good. It would outclimb us. It had double our rate of climb above 25,000 feet. They would outturn us because it was a lighter airplane, and it was made for protection of short range protection within 50 miles of where the airfield was. That's what they were doing. And our aircraft, on the other hand, we were flying F-86As at the time, and we went, I don't know, it was about 150 miles before we got to where we were up in Meg Alley. And by the time we got there, we had about, at the maximum, 20 minutes in the combat area, and then we had to start thinking about having enough fuel to go home. And it was, our biggest problem was that there were 2 things. When I went back over there were 2 things that I noticed that really upset me. One of them was that in the States before flying over there and getting MiGs, and I'm looking at them on TV and thinking, holy Toledo, I got to get back over there and get into this thing. So when I went back, it looked to me like we were going to be into the MiGs every time we went up there. And I said, Jesus, if you just know half of what you're doing, if you don't get 30 or 40 of them, you're really not doing very good. And what had actually happened was I saw a MiG on my second mission. We didn't have enough fuel to fight with him, so that didn't produce anything. The next MiG I saw was on my 48th mission. And I did get into a fight there and shot one airplane down. But when I went on my 86th mission, I had 3 kills and 5 sightings. 5 sightings out of 86 trips, up to MiG Alley and back, and up to MiG Alley and back. And I'm telling you, it drove you nuts. You wanted to get into it, and there's no way to do it. One of the reasons for that was that the MiGs flew once a day. We flew 3 times a day. So right off the bat, you can figure out right away that you got a 33% chance of not seeing anybody, or 66% chance of not getting on the mission where the MiGs were flying. And that's about the way it worked out.
Okay, in World War II, it was 20 millimeter cannons, 50 caliber machine guns. Later on, we'll talk about the air-to-air combat in Vietnam. But what was air-to-air combat? What did it mean to engage in air-to-air combat in Korea? What were your weapons? What were you using? What were you using against the other aircraft?
We had F-86As, and that aircraft was equipped with 6 50 caliber machine guns. And I had that. I got the E later on, and that was, in some ways, was better. But frankly, the A was a little faster but it didn't have a hydraulic control system. It was mechanical. And so one of the problems with that, and the reason they wanted to change it, when you roll over at about 35 or 40,000 feet, and that airplane starts down, you might as well eat a sandwich and listen to the radio until you got to about 17,000, because you weren't going to change anything. The thing was hard as a rock, and you were heading straight down. And at about 16 or 17,000 feet, you begin to get control of it again. When the E came over, the E had a hydraulic system for the controls, and that was great. But it was the same engine and a hell of a lot more weight, and the result was that the aircraft was a little bit slower than the A model.
And did you ever get a MiG on your tail?
On what?
Did you ever have MiGs on your tail?
Boy, I had one. You don't like to think about the dumbest missions that you ever had, but this was one of them. I was up there with the flight of 4, and things were okay. We saw some MiGs down below us, and we dropped the tanks, and I had one tank that didn't come off. And I'm looking down there, and I see the MiGs are down there, and I think, what the hell with one tank gun, that's no problem. I can get that guy and get the hell out of here. And so I called my wingman and told him to just stay above me and make sure nobody jumps me. And I went down and tried to get this single aircraft. Well, in the meantime, the rest of the flight was attacked by a flight of MiGs. One of the flight leader singled me out, and of course he had every bit of extra power, extra turning, extra anything, you name it, and he had more of it than I did. And I rolled over and hit the deck, tried to get down to the deck, and we ended up going through Antone. On the way to Antone, which was about 20 miles, I was trying to get to the water so this guy couldn't get to me. They didn't want to get shot down over the water, and we didn't want to get shot down over the land. It's the same thing. Nobody wanted to be a prisoner. But he's behind me. Every now and then he'd take a couple of shots, and I was moving back and forth. I'd aim myself. When we got to the city, I'd go right straight to the biggest building I could find. And when I was almost going to hit it, but not quite, I'd make a turn. I hope he'd run into it. He didn't. He shot, and I was getting lower on fuel, but I finally got out over the water, and he turned away and went back. But when I was climbing out, I had a little talk with myself. And I won't tell you the profanity that was used, but if you ever do anything like that again, that's the stupidest thing you could have done. You're lucky to get away with it. And that was the worst one I ever did.
And you left Korea in 1952 as the leading jet ace in the Air Force. You left Korea in 1952 as the leading jet ace in the Air Force or in general?
The Air Force.
In the Air Force. Did the Navy or the Marines beat the Air Force?
No.
Oh, okay. So you're the leading ace. You're the ace. Started in 1967.
Right, it's April of '67.
And you were a fairly senior officer at this time.
Yeah, I was a full colonel.
Okay. And what did you think about the war? What did you think about going over there and chances for victory and types of missions you were flying?
Well, I volunteered to go, so I didn't have any real objections. But the idea was to command the outfit, do the job as well as we could, and improve it.
Now, were you satisfied with the quality of your pilots?
Pardon?
Were you satisfied with the quality of your pilots?
Yeah, except I had a couple guys that came in to tell me that they just really can't stand this. They can't do it. And there's two ways you can go, in my opinion, with a guy that does it. This happened to me either 2 or 3 times. And the one way, which I certainly wouldn't do, which is to tell him, get the hell out of here. You're assigned a job, and you're going to have to do it. But I really don't believe in that. That usually causes a guy to get killed or lose an airplane, and maybe even the guy in the back seat of the F-4. So I just call personnel and get them another assignment. Get them out of there and get in a new pilot that really wanted to do the job.
You were flying F-4s.
F-4s, yeah.
And as a commander, how often did you fly?
I flew 157 missions in a year. You figure that out.
Flying out of where?
Flying out of Da Nang.
Okay. Any issues with the Marines?
We had a Marine F-4 squadron on the other side of the field, and commander of that outfit was a great guy. He and I were very close friends, and right after I got there, the squadron really, or the wing really wasn't in very good shape primarily because there was a deal that they couldn't seem to break loose of, and that was something that I had to fight. And I got to the wing commander over there on the other side, the Marine guy, and we devised a plan to try to straighten things out, and it worked out pretty well.
And what kind of missions were you flying? Where were you flying? Into North Vietnam, into the Ho Chi Minh Trail, into Laos, into South Vietnam?
Out of my 157 missions, I flew 108 of them over North Vietnam, and the rest of them were in South Vietnam and some minor places in North Vietnam, although South Vietnam and Laos.
And what was the differences in flying in different locations? Suppose in North Vietnam you have heavier anti-aircraft fire?
Yeah, if you were in North Vietnam, you could figure on the way up and on the way back, you're going to get shot at, so you picked your routes pretty carefully. It was not anywhere near as, I won't use the word dangerous, but it was a lot easier on you when you were flying a mission in Laos or flying a mission and ground troops or something like that. All the missions, practically all the missions that we had in my outfit were air to ground